The sun on Ilion 9 shimmered like liquid copper, casting a molten hue over the colony's central park. Laughter echoed across the grassy field where 10 children chased a levitating ball that glowed softly in their midst. Among them was Elira, age 7, her twin braids whipping in the wind as she sprinted, barefoot and grinning. The children were oblivious to the distant whine of engines, to the sleek vessel descending silently through the clouds. No alarms sounded. No warnings flared. The ship landed like a whisper. Its hull bore the mark of the Kareth Dominion, an emblem of cold, geometric cruelty that Earth's diplomats had long pretended meant peace. The hatch opened with a hiss. 10 figures stepped out, clad in obsidian armor that refracted light like glass in oil. Their visors were opaque, eyes hidden. One held a scanning device. Another carried a long, slender rifle slung across his back like a whisper of death. At first, no one ran. There had been no warning. No reason to fear. Elira saw the soldiers first. She slowed, confused. One of the boys, Timo, waved to them. "Hello. Are you here too?" The first shot punched through his chest. The sound came a heartbeat later, sharp, crisp, unnatural. Timo crumpled without a scream. Then came the second shot. Then a third. Then children were screaming, running, dropping. Elira froze. Her feet wouldn't move. Her body was too small to hold the terror coursing through it. She turned, searching for someone, anyone, to save them. Her teacher lay sprawled beside the picnic table, her blood soaking into the synthetic grass. Instinct, not thought, forced Elira's legs to move. She dove beneath the nearby play structure, pressing herself into the cold shadow under the slide. She didn't breathe. She didn't blink. From her hiding spot, she saw the boots moving. Measured. Unhurried. "They don't resist," one Kareth soldier said, voice filtered through static. "They are defective," another replied. By the time they left, 10 children lay dead. No survivors were recorded. No bodies were retrieved. The soldiers incinerated the corpses with sterile blue fire before departing. But they missed one. Elira remained under that slide until darkness crept over Ilion 9. When Terran rescue teams arrived, they found her still there, silent, staring. She hadn't cried. Not yet. Within 12 hours, security footage leaked. The video, captured by an old maintenance drone, was grainy but clear. It showed children playing. It showed the soldiers. It showed Timo falling first, arms outstretched like wings. It showed the rest. And it showed the Kareth walking away, unhurried, as if they'd crushed insects beneath their boot. The footage went viral in less than 2 hours. On Earth, protests ignited like dry kindling. Candlelight vigils outside Unity Hall became roaring mobs by nightfall. A mother screamed into a microphone on live broadcast, "They murdered my daughter like she was nothing. Nothing. And our leaders said we were allies." The Dominion issued a brief statement. The incident on Ilion 9 was a preventive purification. The subjects posed an eventual threat due to non-compliant cognitive markers. When pressed for clarification, they refused further comment. In the Council of the Terran Alliance, debates raged behind sealed doors. Humanity had long tolerated the Dominion's arrogance, their intrusive surveillance, their cold, patronizing superiority. But this was not politics. This was slaughter. President Alice Vekra, once known for her diplomacy, emerged to address the Earth and its colonies. Her face was drawn tight with restrained fury. "We are done being civilized in the face of murder," she said, voice trembling not with weakness but wrath. "The Dominion has crossed a line so dark, so vile, that no words can redeem it." She paused. Effective immediately, all Kareth Dominion military assets encountered in Terran-controlled space are to be treated as hostile. They are to be destroyed without warning or negotiation. The order is clear: kill on sight. Some called it madness. Others called it justice. But most, across the human worlds, simply nodded. In a facility on Luna Prime, an ancient war AI that hadn't spoken in 30 years awoke and said, "Finally." On Mars, old veterans dug out weapons they'd sworn never to touch again. And in a medbay aboard a refugee vessel, Elira lay in a hospital bed, still silent, still hollow. Her eyes flickered when she heard the speech. She turned her face to the screen. The candlelight in the footage flickered in her pupils. Then, softly, she whispered her first word since the massacre. Good. She was 7 years old. And the war had just begun. The sun on cruiser Talion's edge shimmered like the void without a whisper, casting a molten hue over the colony's that swallowed starlight. Laughter echoed across the grassy field where 10 children like a single levitating ball shadows glowed softly in their midst. At their head among them was Elira, age 7, a man whose braids whipping in the wind as she sprinted. His file had been scrubbed years ago. The children were oblivious to the distant whine of engines. Knew the rumor. To the sleek vessel once killed a Dominion diplomat with nothing but a pen. No alarm sounded. Then used the same pen to sign a ceasefire. The ship landed like a whisper. He sat now in the briefing bay, bore the mark of the Careth under one arm. As the holographic playback geometric cruelty 9 Earth's diplomats had long pretended. The children's laughter echoed in the sterile silence of the room. 10 figures followed by that first clad in obsidian armor that refracted light like glass. He had watched the clip. Their visors were opaque, eyes drop in 30 minutes. One held a scanning device. Said. Another carried a long but slender rifle slung across his back relay like a station Theta 9. At first, it's lightly guarded. There had been no warning space, no reason to fear. This is a signal sever mission. Elira saw the soldiers erase their comms. She slowed, confused. Clean. One of the boys, Clean died with those waved kids. To them. Murmured a young operative named Kirju. His hand flexing through his chest. Rafe the sound came a cutting through the tension with his sharp, crisp, unnatural. This isn't vengeance. Timo crumpled without a scream. This is the beginning of something bigger. Then came the second shot. You don't burn the hive. Then children were screaming, whispers running, first. Dropping. The team nodded. Elira froze. No bravado. Her feet wouldn't just move. Understanding. Her body was when too they small to hold the terror coursing through Talion's edge. She turned into Theta 9's blind spot. Anyone to save signature them. Under her a teacher lay sprawled flare. Beside the picnic Rafe table. Squad infiltrated her blood through a maintenance vent before the outpost sensors not recalibrated. Forced Elira's one sentry died without a sound. She dove beneath the nearby place monomolecular blade, pressing herself into the cold shadow under the slide. The control room was taken in under 6 minutes. From her hiding spot, sounded. She saw the boots no alerts moving. Were triggered, measured. By the time the Dominion noticed, they don't resist. Their communication lattice had already crumbled. Voice filtered through Rafe static. Stared down at the Dominion officer bound before him. By the time they left, 10 children lay dead. Of war. No survivors were recorded, Rafe said quietly. No bodies were retrieved. That silence was mercy. The soldiers incinerated the corpses with sterile blue fire. He left the officer alive. But they missed that one. Was the message. Elira remained news under that strike until Dominion darkness crept before the smoke cleared. 9. In the war chamber aboard the Hand of Careth, they found Supreme her still Overseer Jorthalin staring. Watched the transmission she hadn't with narrowed eyes. Not yet. His within face, 12 hours, and security footage barely moved as he observed the bodies. Captured by an old maintenance drone. His text was grainy but stacked neatly beside it showed children servers. Playing. It showed the soldiers. Escalatory. It showed Timo falling first, Vexon, arms outstretched like wings in agitation. It showed the rest. The humans claimed and it showed the Careth walking away, unhurried, as if they'd crushed insects beneath their boot. The footage went viral in less than 2 hours. The humans had been on Earth. Protests ignited like dry ethics kindling. And empathy. Candlelight vigils outside Unity Hall as became roaring mobs by nightfall. But a mother was screamed into a microphone on live broadcast. This was precision. They murdered my daughter like she was nothing. They grieved differently than we calculated. And our leaders said we were allies. Their wrath comes wrapped the Dominion issued a brief statement. Bristled. The incident on respond in kind was a preventive purification. Jorthalin replied. The subjects posed an eventual threat due to non-compliant cognitive markers. Peace. When pressed for clarification, after they refused further comment. Publicly, in the Council of the Terran Alliance, privately, debates raged behind sealed doors. I want Earth humanity had long tolerated has no monopoly on resolve. Their intrusive even as the Dominion maneuvered diplomatically, patronizing Earth superiority, silent. But this was not politics. No ambassador this was slaughter. Instead, President Alice Vecra, across once known for her diplomacy, quiet explosions in the void, and its colonies. Whole Dominion listening
Her face
posts
was drawn
left
tight
with restrained
their
fury.
databanks shredded.
We are done being
The
civilized
Terran
in the
fleet
face
didn't
of
declare
murder,
war,
she said.
They simply
voice
stopped
trembling
hiding.
not with weakness,
On Earth,
but wrath.
President Vecchera
The Dominion
stood
has
in the
crossed
center
a
of
line
Unity
so
Hall
dark
and addressed
so
her
vile
people once
that
more.
no words can
We do
redeem
not
it.
seek total war,
She paused.
she began.
Effective,
But
neither will
immediately,
we walk the
all
halls
Kareth
of Dominion
diplomacy
military
while our
assets
children
encountered
are buried.
in Terran-controlled
If the Dominion
space
will not
are to be treated
apologize,
as hostile,
will not change,
they are to be destroyed.
we will burn away
without
the
warning
rot until
negotiation
only truth remains.
The order is
Across
clear.
human space,
Kill on
recruitment
sight.
surged.
Some called
Old
it madness.
soldiers enlisted
Others
again.
called it
Their
justice.
scars remembered.
But most, across
Young
the
minds
human
signed
world,
up not for
simply
glory,
nodded. But
in a
because they'd
facility
seen
on
the names
Luna
of the
Prime,
Alien 10
an ancient
read
war
every
AI
evening
that
on
hadn't
every
spoken
channel.
in 30 years
It was
awoke
not
and said,
propaganda. Finally,
it was grief
on
Mars.
weaponized.
Old veterans
Elira
dug
watched
out weapons
all
they'd
unfold
sworn
from
never
the
to touch
recovery
again.
wing of Luna
And in a
Prime.
medbay aboard
She
a
barely
refugee
spoke,
vessel,
but she
Elira
listened.
lay in a
She
hospital
watched.
bed, still
One
silent.
evening, a woman
Still
arrived
hollow.
at her bedside.
Her eyes flickered
Colonel
when she
Juno
heard the
Mayles,
speech.
head of
She
the
turned
children
her
of the
face to
Flame
screen.
Initiative,
The
an
candlelight
elite
in the
program
footage
designed
flickered
for
in her
survivors of
pupils.
Dominion war
Then,
crimes.
softly,
You
she
remember
whispered
them,
her
don't
first
you?
word since the
Mayles
massacre.
asked gently.
Good.
The ones
She
who
was 7
fell.
years old.
Elira didn't
and the war
answer
had
with
just
words.
begun.
She opened her hand, revealing 10 small stones. Smooth. Worn. Each marked with a tiny carved symbol. They played with me, she said softly. They died first. I said I would remember them. Mayles nodded once. Would you like to do more than remember? Elira looked up. Her eyes weren't innocent anymore. I want them to be afraid. Mayles reached out. Then let's begin. The war wasn't declared with a speech. It began with whispers, with surgical strikes, with a child placing 10 stones in a circle and saying the names out loud until she didn't cry anymore. The Dominion didn't realize it yet, but the cost of Alien 9 had just begun to accrue. An interest in human history was always paid in blood. Elira stood motionless at the edge of the old Alien 9 park, now a ruin fenced off with high-carbon wire and automated sentry drones. The playground was gone, no laughter, no grass, no memories untouched. In its place rose a black monolith bearing 10 names, etched in quantum glass that would never fade. The wind carried dust and silence, the kind that choked more than lungs. Elira, now 16, wore a matte combat suit with her unit's insignia, a phoenix wrapped around a child's hand. She no longer looked like the girl who had hidden under the slide. That girl had died. What remained was the one who survived. "Ma'am, we've got movement," said Lieutenant KG, now older, harder, his voice gruffer than she remembered. His eyes still carried guilt, though it no longer slowed him. Dominion Patrol. They're inside the perimeter. Elira turned without hesitation. Squad status. 6 bodies in motion. All Kareth armor. 1 is marked. Could be command. She nodded once. No prisoners. The team deployed in silence, boots barely whispering against stone. Dominion soldiers were desecrating the site. One had kicked the monolith, another urinated on the shrine. Laughter rose among them, shrill and harsh, alien and hollow. They didn't know who watched. They didn't care. Until they fell. Elira moved like a shadow, her blade slicing the air before blood even had time to warm. One soldier dropped with his windpipe severed, another with a hole through his temple. The commander turned, raising a shock rifle, but never fired. A kinetic dart pierced his visor before the command finished forming on his lips. When it was over, the ground drank in their silence. Elira stepped toward the monolith and wiped the filth from its base. She knelt, placing 10 fresh stones in a circle. She whispered each name, not as a ritual, but as a promise. Then she stood and activated the transmitter embedded in her gauntlet. Alien site secured. Casualties, 0. Dominion presence neutralized. A beat of static. Then, understood, Captain Elira. Stand by for further tasking. The title didn't feel strange anymore. Neither did the silence after a kill. The war hadn't changed her. It had revealed her. Elsewhere, a different mission unfolded. Operation Purity Ends, a full strike on a Dominion child reconditioning facility, was in motion. Rafe Soren led the assault himself. They had found the facility buried under the ice plains of Jorofor, hidden behind diplomatic protections and cloaked sensor field. What lay within was worse than intelligence predicted. Human children wired into neural correction pods, indoctrinated with Dominion ideology through dream molding and pain cycles. Rafe moved through the facility like a knife, his team eliminating guards with a cold, focused fury. No speeches. No hesitation. They reached the control center, where a Kareth officer stood amid monitors showing the looping cries of broken children. He turned to Rafe with something like pride. They were becoming something greater, the officer sneered. You ruined their evolution. Rafe shot him in the face. By the time the Terran forces extracted the survivors, the facility had been rigged to burn. The fire rose high enough to be seen from orbit. Dominion broadcasts claimed it was a terrorist attack. Earth didn't bother replying. They released footage, unedited, of the children being pulled from machines, of their haunted eyes, of the scars etched into their skin. The galaxy watched, and shifted. Several neutral species, once silent, began reaching out to Earth in private. Not alliances, not apologies, just quiet acknowledgments that perhaps they'd misjudged humanity. The Dominion retaliated, of course. Battles flared in the asteroid belts of Sector Vega, in the artificial reefs of Lunaqua, and over the volcanic moons of Drexos Prime. Yet each time, Earth responded with fury honed into precision. No territory was taken. No quarter given. Earth did not invade. It punished. Alira rose quickly through the rank. Her mind, sharp and unflinching, became a weapon commanders feared misusing. She didn't seek revenge anymore. She sought permanence. A new order where this would never happen again. One evening, she stood alone in a comms chamber on a forward command station, watching a broadcast prepared by the Terran High Command. Her own voice narrated the final message. This is not conquest. This is consequence. Let the massacre at Ilion 9 be remembered not as the start of a war, but the moment the galaxy learned the cost of taking what cannot be returned. The camera cut to her, older now, dressed in full armor, the monolith behind her glowing softly in the dusk. I am Alira. I survived. And I remember. She ended the message there. No threats. Just memory weaponized. Across Dominion worlds, recruitment began to falter. Civilians whispered of Earth's precision. Of the girl who would not die. Of the ghost fleet that struck without sound. The phrase, kill on sight, no longer carried shock. It carried certainty. In the solitude of her quarters, Alira sometimes dreamt of the playground. Of Timo's outstretched arms. Of the ball frozen midair. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't wake with screams. But she remembered. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, Dominion minds calculated probabilities, projected losses, and finally began to wonder, not whether they could win, but whether Earth would ever let them forget. The Dominion flagship Caratha's Vow drifted silently through the shadowed sector of the Nari expanse, its hull pitted with the scars of recent engagements. Inside the war chamber, the air vibrated with restrained fury. Supreme Overseer Jorthalan stood before a star map riddled with red, the outlines of lost listening posts, burned satellites, and decimated facilities flickering like dying stars. The campaign against Earth had not just stalled, it had recoiled. 27 strategic assets, Vex'an muttered, her voice brittle. Gone in 43 days. The humans have abandoned diplomacy, spat General Croth, slamming his clawed hand on the projection table. They strike without warning, without rules, barbarism disguised as strategy. No, Jorthalan said softly. They are playing by rules we wrote. We underestimated the depth of their memory. And now, we bleed for every name etched into that monument. There was a moment of silence. He turned to them, his voice a low growl. Humanity does not want war. It wants certainty. They don't fight for expansion. They fight so they never have to build another memorial. A comms officer entered, trembling. Interception, Overseer. Priority transmission. Human encryption. The message, once decrypted, played without warning. It wasn't military data. It wasn't a threat. It was a voice. Alira's. Her tone was measured, calm, but the steel beneath it rang like a blade unsheathed. This is your final notice. We will not negotiate with those who do not mourn. You cannot apologize for what you refuse to acknowledge. We are not seeking victory. We are making an example. So that Alien 9 never happens again, not to us. Not to anyone. The message ended. Silence followed. She speaks for them, Jorthalin whispered. Back on Earth, Alira stood before the Council of Unified Command. She wasn't there for permission, she already had operational autonomy. She was there to propose an endgame. We target their genetic ascension program, she said. The one they call the Premarch Core. It's buried deep beneath Karshal, one of their core worlds. If we dismantle that, we cut the spine from their ideology. Without it, they're fractured. No more evolution through domination. Just silence. An older general frowned. That would be an act of total war. This is total war, she replied. They just didn't expect us to bring scalpel and torch. The room fell into quiet agreement. The vote passed unanimously. The operation, codename Echo Zero, was planned in layers so intricate that even Alira couldn't see the full scope. But she led the assault team personally. It had to be her. Talion's Edge jumped into Karshal orbit cloaked by a solar flare disruption crafted by Earth's most brilliant physicists. Every second of failure risked extinction, but they didn't fail. The breach began in the ice fields north of the Premarch complex. Alira's team moved like ghosts beneath the Dominion's ancient capital, through tunnels untouched by even their own soldiers. Resistance was expected. What they found instead was an ambush, but not the kind they anticipated. As they entered the central chamber, they found the facility already partially destroyed, systems ruptured, consoles fried. And in the center, a single Kareth scientist stood waiting, arms raised. I sabotaged it, he said in unaccented English. The Primarchs are dead. Alira froze. Why? He didn't lower his arms. Because we saw you're dead. And we realized we've become what we claim to oppose. Evolution, we said. But it was extinction for everyone else. That's not ascension. That's fear. The standoff held for long seconds. Then Alira lowered her weapon. They extracted the defector, uploaded every shred of data they could find, and rigged the core to melt in on itself. As they evacuated, the ground beneath Karshal shook with a quiet violence that marked the end of an era. No declaration was made. No victory parade. But within weeks, Dominion broadcasts shifted. Propaganda networks collapsed. A dozen subspecies revolted. Treaties were renegotiated with trembling hands. And on the anniversary of Alien 9, something unexpected happened. A transmission arrived. Public. Unencrypted. It was Jorthalin. He stood alone in an empty chamber, eyes unguarded. No soldiers. No symbols. We were wrong, he said. We believed survival justified everything. That fear was strength. But fear built this war, and your grief dismantled it. He paused, then did what no Dominion overseer had done in centuries. He bowed his head. To the 10. And to the girl who did not forget. The feed cut. Alira watched it from her quarters, a mug of untouched tea in her hand. KG sat across from her, older now, missing 2 fingers from the Drexo's skirmish. Do you believe him? He asked. No, she said. But I believe in the silence that follows him. Outside, the stars drifted silently past. For once, no alerts chimed. No warnings blinked. She stood and placed the mug beside 10 new stones on her shelf. They died, she said softly, but they built something. KG tilted his head. What? She looked at the stars. Fear that learns.